Okay, so I am recording and I will also be enabling the auto transcription. And if you don't want to be seeing what people are saying, like written up there, you can actually, I think, let's see, how does that happen? You can click on live transcript on your control panel and hit hide subtitle. So some people like me get easily distracted. And if you're one of those people, feel free to just hide the subtitles. So I want to really thank you all for joining us. This is our last workshop associated with specific asset areas under resource conservation. Resource conservation, as you know, is an opportunity for planners to focus on something other than their use of toxic chemicals, reportable toxic chemicals. And so we've had sessions on water conservation and energy conservation, which were really very interesting. And this one is on the materials that contribute to solid waste, which is also, there's lots of opportunity there. And we're going to hear a lot of information about that. We'll have plenty of time to interact as well. Want to just really quickly introduce our speakers. We've got Gary List joining us. Gary has 47 years experience in recycling. He's a leading advocate of zero waste and has worked on zero waste across the United States. Gary is Vice President of Zero Waste USA, past president and lifetime honorary board member of the National Recycling Coalition, and is coordinator of the Recycling is Infrastructure 2 campaign. He's an assessor for True Zero Waste Rating System of the GBCI, and Gary's actually a former mayor of Loomis, California. So Gary, really happy to have you joining us. We're also joined by three members of the Center for EcoTechnology and particularly the Recycling Works program. We have Lauren Potter, who is the program manager with CET. She's been with the organization for more than 4 years and oversees several programs, including Recycling Works in Massachusetts. Heather Billings is joining us. She has a degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA in sustainability and over 25 years of experience in waste and recycling field. She's a senior environmental specialist for CET and makes practical waste diversion recommendations to businesses and institutions. Heather specializes in assisting with reducing, donating, and diverting wasted food. So thanks for joining us, Heather. And finally, we have Abby Massaro, who's joining us. She's an environmental specialist at CET, where she provides individualized assistance to businesses throughout the country. Since 2018, she supported CET initiatives to help commercial and institutional entities develop recycling, reuse, and food waste recovery programs. Abby's a zero waste true advisor and a member of the board of directors at the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility and Mass Recycle. So really happy for all of you to be joining us here today. And again, materials that contribute to solid waste is something that we don't often think about when we think about resource conservation, but it's a really important opportunity for companies, and we're going to be hearing a lot from our speakers. So Gary, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and share your screen, and you can kick it off for us.
Great, thanks so much, Pam. Can you see the screen fine?
Yep, it's perfect.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. And thank you for Turi for your leadership, not only in Massachusetts, but in the country and probably in the world. You provide a unique expertise and area of activity that is really important to addressing these issues. The logo here on this slide was developed by Michael Hulls for campaign that initially started the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, emphasizing that this is a business-friendly message about zero waste. and not letting your bottom line go to waste. Um, I am talking about zero waste to highlight the opportunities for materials resource conservation, as Pam mentioned. And to define zero waste, I often start with reduce, reuse, recycle. It's one of the most well-known phrases in the world. We're just saying that zero waste is all about reduce, reuse, recycle for real, and focusing first on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, and redesigning the rest. So the elevator speech of what zero waste is, it's all about reduce, reuse, recycle for real. However, there is a international definition that's been peer reviewed and accepted by zero waste leaders all over the world, developed by the Zero Waste International Alliance, which was formed in 2002 to set standards for what zero waste means. And this definition was updated in 2018 to emphasize a couple of key points. First, that it's all about conserving resources, without burning, and with no discharges to land, water, or air. No burn, no bury is a key message, and no discharges to land, water, or air. Zero means zero is by definition what we're striving for. The measure of performance to get recognized as a zero waste facility or business or community is to achieve 90% diversion from landfills, incinerators, and the environment. And incinerators are broadly defined as anything that operates over 212 degrees Fahrenheit, any thermal processing system, because of the concerns about the emissions. One of the key drivers for zero waste has been climate change, and it was since Inconvenient Truth in the early 2006-2007 period that zero waste really caught on and was led thereafter by businesses who are finding in the recession of 2008 that zero waste is all about efficiency and working to conserve resources. The connections between zero waste and climate change are that landfills are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases. The majority of the gases are methane, and methane acts more potently than CO2 in the atmosphere, 25 times more potently over a 100-year horizon, but most importantly, 72 times more potent than CO2 over a 20-year horizon. That means that these are short-lived gases that are contributing to accelerating the greenhouse effect faster than CO2. So anything that can be done to stop that methane from being generated is important. The methane in landfills comes from organic materials that are decomposing in anaerobic environment in the landfills. So all about keeping organics out of the landfill, or as a new campaign from the Zero Waste USA calls it, Cool Now, compostable organics out of landfills now. And there's a coolnow.org website for more information on that. When we first started advocating for this, we found that recycling and composting all the remaining materials discarded in California using the WARM model of EPA would be the equivalent of taking all cars off the roads in California. So that really underscored the importance of this connection between zero waste and climate change. Part of it is because of the Wasteberg. For every ton in front of us or in a municipal landfill, there have been 71 tons created upstream along the way from mining, manufacturing, and distribution of products. So the only way we can address that Wasteberg is by reducing and eliminating the wasteful practices, and that's what zero waste is all about. When you look at the systems-based view of the pie chart of all the greenhouse gas emissions in the US, this is a dated slide from 2009. The data has not been updated, but the point is still valid no matter what the current numbers are. And what it shows that from a systems-based view, if you look at providing products and packaging for different uses of appliances, devices, the total of that is 37% of all greenhouse gases in the US. If you look at the green slice of food, anything to do with the creation and distribution and use of food is 13%. So the combination of the 13 and the 37, 50% of all greenhouse gases in America could be reduced by zero waste policies that influence those systems. And we're not saying that zero waste will reduce 50% of all the greenhouse gases, but we can have an influence on that. And typical zero waste plans in climate action plans of communities have found that 10 to 20% of all the local and upstream greenhouse gas reductions will come from the zero waste initiatives. In Because they are local in nature and within the control of local government, unlike transportation, building designs, and other sources of greenhouse gases, these emissions can be reduced more quickly by local government intervention in the marketplace. And we see that in Fort Collins, where they reported that more than half of their emissions reductions to date under their climate initiatives have come from their zero waste initiatives. So this is really important for addressing climate change. It's also key to a circular economy. Where we hopefully are looking at things as either biological nutrients or technical nutrients. And things that don't conform to those categories are considered leakage under the circular economy espoused by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So zero waste is all about is contributing to tools to help achieve this type of separation of materials to reinvest into the circular economy. It also is all about creating a just economy and environmental justice as priorities to address fence line communities that are being disproportionately impacted by many of the greater pollution that's coming from different activities. And that's an important part of what Zero Waste is striving for. Baltimore has developed the first fair development plan for zero waste in the country that really emphasize the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion issues that should be addressed in zero waste moving forward. With all those great benefits, the question is it attainable? This is responding to the eye rolling when people first hear the phrase zero waste, if they haven't heard it before. And we say we've got 3.5 billion years of experience in nature. In nature, there are no landfills or incinerators. Everything's a resource or a home for something else. We also early on came up with the phrase zero waste or darn close. And that was all about the idea that the goal is zero, but it's all about the journey to zero that's most important, to do the analysis needed to get to zero and to implement as many policies, programs, and new infrastructure as possible to achieve those goals. So not having engineers, accountants, and attorneys getting hung up on the word zero. It's all about the journey and working to get as close to that as possible, which is why the Zero Waste International Alliance signals that to be recognized as a leader in zero waste, as a legitimate leader, you should be diverting 90% of your materials from landfills, incinerators, in the environment. That measure of performance has been baked into the True Zero Waste program that I'll be talking about later. The good news is that businesses have already achieved over 90% waste reduction. And these are large businesses, small businesses, electronic firms, organic based firms, in rural areas, in urban areas, and all over the world. Literally 2,800 businesses in Japan, because they took this seriously, the Kyoto Protocols for climate change in the 1990s, and they hired ZERI, the Zero Emissions Research Initiatives, with a $10 million grant to help those businesses get to zero waste. And by 2005, it was reported by the head of ZERI, Gunter Pauli, that over 2,800 businesses had embraced that goal, and that a third of them had achieved both the zero waste to landfill and incinerators. That's why there's a lot of Japanese companies on this list, because they've been in the lead for the business community. But each of these businesses has a story to tell. The ones with a red asterisk are certified by True, and there are examples at true.gbc.org under projects, and those project descriptions at GBCI are just wonderful and inspiring for you to sort through to find a business like yours, to see a model that you can cite in your internal corporate memorandum about how others in your industry sector are moving forward with moving to zero waste. One of my favorites that has not been certified by True is General Motors, where a couple of years ago they reported that 117 plants had achieved over 97% diversion, saving $1 billion a year. And that's just remarkable story that came from their commitment to zero waste and reducing their impacts on the environment. Why would businesses do this? First of all, every zero waste business we've documented has saved money. They save the most by reducing and eliminating and redesigning their systems and their processes, all about pollution prevention and toxic use reduction. Those save money to the businesses, both in terms of the purchase of products and materials coming in to make their products, and save money in the avoided landfill and disposal costs. It reduces their liability under CERCLA, the Superfund Act. When landfills leak, the accountants, engineers, and attorneys get together and figure out how much everyone contributed to the landfill, and then send them a bill for their proportionate share of the cleanup costs for those landfills. So that is not typically on a balance sheet, but it is a liability that gets the attention of CEOs and CFOs of companies. It's all about increasing efficiency. The average business, when they purchase materials and products and resources to make their products, Gil Friend reported years ago that the average business wastes 90 to 95% of all their resources that don't contribute to the actual product. And that's why we have lean manufacturing, and factor 4, we can do 4 times more efficient. Factor 10, we can be 10 times more efficient. It's all because there's a huge opportunity there. And it's why during the recession, we found a lot of businesses looking at, they couldn't keep increasing their profit by making new products and marketing more. Where they could save money was through efficiency efforts like zero waste. We talked about reducing greenhouse gases earlier. The marketing edge is a reason why a lot of businesses have gotten into zero waste and gotten third-party verification of their accomplishments meeting international standards, like the True Zero Waste program does. Those are in compliance with the Federal Trade Commission green marketing guidelines as well, to ensure that companies are doing what they are trying to get credit for in their marketing to their customers, that they're green, sustainable businesses. Clean energy and saving energy refers to biological production, like through anaerobic digesters, which is particularly relevant for restaurants and food generating businesses. And in Massachusetts, you have a lot of materials being burned in what zero waste industry considers incinerators, otherwise known as waste to energy. And for Zero Waste International Alliance, they've documented that conserving energy from all the zero waste initiatives saves 3 to 5 times more energy than can be produced by burning those resources and destroying them forever, rather than reinvesting them back as technical nutrients into this circular economy or back into the soil as biological nutrients. It's also the right thing to do for businesses. Retaining employees, studies have shown that green businesses retain their employees longer. Many of the zero waste businesses that I've been assessor for on the True project, we do interviews of the employees, and the employees all say they love to work for a company that shares their values. And that's how they keep the employees with their companies. In today's low unemployment rate economy, this is not an insignificant factor. So again, many businesses, large and small, are pursuing all that. Early in 2005, the Zero Waste International Alliance came up with business principles of what we would look for zero waste to look like for businesses that embraced all aspects of zero waste, committing to the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit, using the precautionary principle of doing no harm, zero waste to landfill and incineration, buying reused, recycled, and compost, taking back products and packaging, demonstrating responsibility in the marketplace, which is now being talked about with extended producer responsibility for packaging as being proposed in about a third of the states in the United States. Other principles are preventing pollution, reducing wasting, pursuing the highest and best use of those materials, using economic incentives for customers, workers, and suppliers, making sure that the products or services sold are not wasted or toxic, and using non-toxic production, reuse, and recycling processes. The GBCI True Zero Waste Rating System has 81 credits in it, with only 5 of those for achieving the 90% goal. The rest of it is steering businesses to be looking at how can they provide more leadership in focusing on redesigning, reducing, reusing, composting materials, addressing upstream management, closed loop systems, innovating. So the zero waste rating system is designed to help meet the new zero waste economy that we're striving for. When we're looking at all these things, we also see the connections with P2, that pollution prevention, that zero waste has focused, particularly by the Zero Waste International Alliance, on non-hazardous solid waste, whereas pollution prevention has focused on toxics and hazardous solid waste. In zero waste and recycling, it's focused more on crushing and grinding materials. And in pollution prevention, it's applying a lot of different sciences, engineering, biology, chemistry, physics, and natural principles to solve the problems. As a result, pollution prevention could help a lot with zero waste in redesigning products and processes, finding new uses for hard to recycle materials, working together with public, academic, and private sector, doing research and development like we included as part of the zero waste plan for Boston a number of years ago. Providing technical assistance to businesses is something pollution prevention resource centers do around the country, and could help with businesses that are striving for zero waste and helping to find alternatives to toxics. Zero waste could help pollution prevention sector by identifying products needing redesign, identifying hard to recycle and toxic materials, setting up those research and development programs like the Boston Zero Waste Plan calls for, identifying business needing a technical assistance, recognizing and certifying what is the accomplishments are, and helping on training like this today on these issues. In a zero waste plan we developed for, a group of us developed for Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque. This is a slide from our final presentation to them, highlighting how we reviewed their purchasing records, summarized their existing system from a zero waste audit, identified service opportunities, which means things that they're not doing that they could or should be doing to get to zero waste, evaluating policies, programs, and infrastructure needed, looked at the economics and funding sources to fund investments that were needed, and including recommendations, including a diversion tracking system, along with an implementation timeline. Key in zero waste planning is getting everyone involved, total employee involvement from every department and contractors and suppliers, looking at both technical fixes and improvements and a culture change. At RICO, where this kite flying contest was developed as a employee event activity, they were trying to figure out how to build the best kites out of discarded materials at their plants. It's a really fun activity. It's all about continual improvement in Kaizen, which the Japanese companies talk a lot about, and celebrating the successes. For businesses, the stakeholders include upstream, the vendors, suppliers, designers, and marketers, the downstream, the haulers, recyclers, brokers, and composters. In operations in the plant, the food service providers, janitorial, property management, and working together with the community, getting services and helping the community with food banks, government, nonprofit customers, and schools. To do your planning, you need to know your discards, to know what you're discarding and where you're discarding it from. Years ago, Urban Ore came up with these 12 master categories for marketing of materials. And you'll notice the diagonal line through it shows that everything below that line is essentially compostable and would make a great recipe for compost. So over 50% of the typical community discards are able to be composted, which is why that's a really important part in addition to the methane issues we talked about earlier. Figuring out your materials comes from audits and waste and recyclable characterization studies for all the different categories of reusables, recyclables, compostables, and your residues or discards. Doing site visits, flipping lids, looking in and seeing what's in the containers, and looking at for comparable businesses in your field to get whatever data is available to help give you insights in what types of new policies, programs, and infrastructure you're needing. Finding in your business the sources of the materials. At each business in the True Zero Waste rating system, that includes these 9 points of generation, highlighting different things that are typically found, typical areas of activity in businesses. In True, they ask you to look at each of those and make sure that each area is using resources for the highest and best use and minimizing the discards and wasteful practices. Knowing the values of the materials is important. On this chart from Fort Collins, Colorado, we highlighted that the value of reusables was $400 a ton, way more than anything else. And typically for communities, reusables represent 40% of all the value that's being thrown away. And this is used to highlight to communities that even though reusables may be only 2 to 6% on average for communities of their total discard stream, Um, if they're 40% of the value, that means it's a huge opportunity to reinvest those resources into the community for food banks, for thrift stores, for building reuse warehouses like restores that Habitat for Humanity have developed all over the country. And businesses will find similar values for their materials. These numbers are old. Cardboard and paper are way more now, so these analyses we've done have been conservative and are based on local economics at the time. As part of the planning, knowing your existing policies and programs and figuring out what new ones are needed to achieve your goals. Looking at how you've structured your contracts for waste and recycling, collection, processing, and disposal. What size and frequency of collection are your containers picked up? How it relates to your company's sustainability, climate change, and waste policies, and looking at information on your website and materials provided to employees are ways of getting a quick summary of your existing system. And then redesigning it with the idea of highest and best use in mind. This is the Zero Waste Hierarchy of Highest and Best Use developed by ZWIA, the Zero Waste International Alliance, underscoring the importance of rethinking and redesigning as the first priority, even above reducing and reusing, and then recycling and composting, material recovery, residuals management as the rest. Reducing first is all about designing out wasting. The word wasting, by the way, is a verb. A waste as a noun should only be accompanied by the adjective zero. Otherwise, wasting is a choice that is made to discard something for no longer to be used. So using the proper language is important as we get into this field. And recognizing that wasting is not inevitable, that businesses save the most by eliminating inefficient practices. RICO came up with the 5 R's, including adding to the reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse, and return. They refuse from their vendors any materials that will be have to be discarded by them, and if they have to be discarded, they ask their vendors to take them back, to return to vendor, return to sender. And including takebacks as a key tool, including in purchase specifications to take back products at the end of the useful life. The next 2 slides are directly out of the True Zero Waste rating system as things they emphasize important for training and leadership, to adopt zero waste policies and provide them to all employees, to communicate regularly with staff about zero waste and achievements, posting zero waste info on internal websites, like in the picture on the photo from the key performance indicators snapshot at Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, including zero waste and employee evaluations, and linking them to bonuses or other incentives. Like group parties for different groups of employees in different points of generation. Training purchasing agents on zero waste preferences and designating someone responsible for zero waste. With upper management reviewing monthly diversion activities and the company taking responsibility for all products and packaging and requiring their suppliers to do the same, and promoting zero waste in the community. Part of planning is setting a zero waste goal and a timeline and date. That can be done in climate change, sustainability, or zero waste plans. The sweet spot, the easiest thing to do is include it in a climate change and sustainability plan first to achieve zero waste. And that gets you pre-approval from management to then go forward and figure out the details in a zero waste plan. The goal should be a higher waste diversion goal than current, and based on a realistic expectation of what you can get from new policies, programs, and infrastructure. A really key low-hanging fruit for pursuing zero waste is right sizing. recognizing that a lot of companies oversubscribe for trash service and often design the level of trash pickup based on the peak need when they should do it for average needs and arrange for a way to bring in additional service when needed. So that garbage companies are not just hauling airspace, which they're happy to haul air, but it's not cost effective for businesses, and it's right sizing is really key to a lot of the savings that zero waste has provided to businesses. Looking at downsizing the size and frequency of collection of the containers being pursued. In the zero waste plans, we do economic and look at the jobs impacts as well as the greenhouse gas impacts. These are just two covers from Boston University Zero Waste Plan we just did about 2 years ago, and the Sandia one I mentioned earlier. It's all about striving for a zero waste economy of clean production, retailers taking back products, consumers, including businesses in your purchasing, asserting what your desires are through your purchasing powers. Producers taking responsibilities for taking back their own products and supporting recovery infrastructure like EPR bills are working towards developing, creating resource recovery parks, co-locating reuse, recycling, and composting businesses and activities to make it easier to site them in the future, creating many more jobs than in the current system, changing the rules. Zero wasters don't accept rules that are impeding zero waste. They work to figure out what rules are stopping them and then change them to make zero waste happen. Shifting subsidies for wasting and designing for the environment, not the dump. The next couple of slides I have, I'm just going to race through. As part of the Recycling is Infrastructure 2 campaign, we've been doing a series of webinars on the new infrastructure funding, largely through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. U.S. Department of Agriculture has funding for largely governments, but businesses can partner with those governments to get funding. They've got 10 million available in this fiscal year. And the request for applications will be coming out shortly probably this summer and going into next year. The same thing at the US EPA. They have funding for infrastructure investments, but can partner with businesses. 55 million a year for 5 years, and for outreach and education, 15 million a year for the next 5 years. EPA pollution prevention funding has both infrastructure money and regular money in the existing Biden budget. Those applications for this year were due in April, but this is an annual effort, so I definitely encourage you to look into it. In our webinars, we've highlighted that 90% of the work is done in advance of the request for applications coming out by figuring out what you want to do, how you're going to approach it, who's going to be partners with you in that effort. All that needs to be figured out, and getting on grants.gov, the mechanism for applying for federal funding, all takes time. And so now's the time to start on next year's funding, figuring things out like that. There's a lot of resources out there, including Zero Waste USA, ZWIA, GBCI, and we have a National Zero Waste Conference this year. I'll be November 30th to December 1, all virtual, organized by Zero Waste USA. The last slide I always use is, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And I'd like everyone to unmute at this time, if you could. Yourselves, or if the organizers could allow everyone to unmute, because I've got a really important polling question for everyone in attendance. So I'm not saying people, there we go. Okay, people are unmuting. Okay, now the real question is, how much waste are you for? And I want to hear an answer.
Zero.
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 Okay.
Zero.
now that you got it, I'm going to try that one more time. Okay, how much waste are you for?
Zero.
Oh,
Okay, one more time, just to make sure we got it, and the people down the hall from you in your offices or your house can really hear you saying this. How much waste are you for?
Zero.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary. That was super fun little poll there. Listen, we have time for a quick question before we move on. Jean has asked, are people quantifying the benefits of redesign? So for the example, the table of benefits from Fort Collins, did they look at redesign or preventing some of the wastes? And if so, were they able to quantify those benefits? And how did they do that?
A great question. I think industry is probably doing a better job at that. There's a new institute at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, the Zero Waste Institute, that is working on difficult to recycle materials for Berkeley owned operations. And I think they would probably be one of the folks that have the best data on that. Some of the communities like the Castro Valley Sanitation District in the San Francisco Bay Area do a really great job at quantifying things, so they probably have that type of information. I don't believe Fort Collins has redesign info. One of the things I was struck by at the Boston Green Build Conference in 2017 that I attended was the Kohler exhibit, where they had all their material scientists highlighting at their booth. The sole thing their booth was highlighting is that they got their material scientists to figure out what to do, how to use the materials that they discarded. And I bet Kohler, therefore, has a lot of redesign information. Be definitely good to track down. It's an area that we need to focus on more. Great question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So hopefully we're going to have time to talk in small groups and at the end of the presentation. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and move on and ask Abby if you could go ahead and share your slides.
yep. Let me navigate there now. Alrighty. So, hi everyone. I'm Abby. I'm with Recycling Works in Massachusetts. We have Heather and Lauren with us as well. We also have our colleague Olivia, who will be sharing resources in the chat and answering some questions as well. So before we get started, I just wanted to mention, as Pam mentioned, we're going to be doing a breakout group in a few moments, and we'll also be doing some polling too. So we don't have too many polls, but you will be seeing that come across your screen as well in a few. So with that, we can pass it off to Lauren to kick us off with some MassDEP updates.
Great.
And an overview of who we are.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you for managing these few slides here. So my name's Lauren. I'm a program manager at the Center for EcoTechnology, and today we're representing the Recycling Works program, which is a statewide program funded by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection to help businesses and institutions of all different kinds reduce waste and maximize reuse, recycling, and food recovery options. So I'm going to say a few words about the initiatives at MassDEP right now and existing waste bans and a couple of changes to come this fall. Abby, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So talking about waste bans, but I want to emphasize that Recycling Works is a non-regulatory program, so we don't ourselves enforce or certify compliance with any of these waste disposal bans. Our assistants that you'll learn more about from Abby and Heather can help ensure that your programs are running smoothly to recover these waste ban materials, and that decrease the likelihood that you would run into any issues with compliance with the MassDEP in the future. But we're not here to get anyone in trouble, just here to help and be a friendly kind of program to bounce ideas off of and lean on when you run into any challenges. So Oh, Abby, can you, yeah, go back to that one. So DEP has implemented a number of different waste bans. Some of the common ones are listed here. And these started in the 1990s. So cardboard and paper have been banned for decades. And over time, they've added additional materials. And these bans are intended to, reduce reliance on landfills and incineration facilities in the state, reduce greenhouse gas emissions affiliated with that activity. And they also really spur activity in the recycling industry, which is an important part of the Massachusetts economy. And as you'll notice, the first two boxes highlight a couple of changes that are coming to the waste bans as a result of MassDEP's 2030 Solid Waste Master Plan. So they published a new 10-year master plan in October of 2021. And this plan sets fairly aggressive waste reduction goals. They are aiming for a 30% reduction in waste disposal volumes by 2030 and 90% reduction by 2050. That's compared to a 2018 baseline, so prior to the 2020 plan. It's going to be a lot of work required to achieve those goals. And one of the steps that they're taking in that direction is to expand these waste ban regulations effective November 1st, 2022. So that's this fall. The changes in bold will go into effect. So that will include lowering the threshold on the existing commercial food waste disposal ban. Right now, the food waste disposal ban applies to any businesses or institutions that are generating more than 1 ton of food material per week. And that is going to change to a 1/2 ton of food material per week. And that will, spur additional activity among food businesses and smaller food businesses, in particular, restaurants, hospitality, markets, that kind of thing. But it also can apply to large businesses that may have corporate cafeterias on site or have, large events, that kind of thing, can be generating as much as a 1/2 ton per week. So that's important to be aware of. Also effective November 1st, mattresses, including box springs, and textiles, which includes all things clothing, linens, fabrics, etc. These will be added to the list of materials banned from disposal. And we're here to help establish programs if you generate any of these materials. I see a question about how textiles and mattresses will be disposed of. They can be diverted from disposal through either reuse or recycling initiatives. Reuse is much more limited for mattresses, so recycling is kind of the key solution for mattresses. We have a database on our website that lists service providers for reuse and recycling of textiles and mattresses. We can also help point you in the right direction to service providers that operate in your area that would be the best fit for kind of the volume of material that you generate. But there is already a robust infrastructure for recycling of both textiles and mattresses in Massachusetts. And as we're helping more and more businesses address these materials, we're learning more every day about some of the programs that are in place and what really happens to this material. So that's been really interesting to learn about, and something that we can help with if your business generates any of these waste ban materials. And I think go on to the next slide. So on behalf of DEP, I wanted to share some opportunities for engagement where you can share your perspective, have your voice heard, and inform sort of statewide priorities and policies going forward. So not all of these are listed on this slide, but we can share them in the chat as well. So MassDEP has a solid waste advisory committee, and this is sort of the umbrella organization that provides input to MassDEP, or committee that provides input on solid waste regulations, policies, and programs. It's open to the public. Anyone can attend these virtual meetings, and they just scheduled one for next week, Thursday, May 5th at 10 a.m. So I wanted to mention that, and I think Olivia is sharing it in the chat. Underneath the Solid Waste Advisory Committee umbrella, there are several subcommittees as well. Highly relevant to today's topic, and this group is the Reduce and Reuse Working Group. This is a relatively new working group that was established, I believe, in 2020. And they are coincidentally meeting tomorrow, Thursday, April 28th at 10 a.m. All of these meetings are virtual since the pandemic, so you can register online and attend by Zoom. That working group is a forum for discussion of all things source reduction, reuse, and repair regulations, policies, and programs in the state. It was established to help MassDEP develop a reuse reduction and reuse action plan, which they released in December of 2021. So going forward, these meetings will be about implementation of the strategies in that plan. And tomorrow's meeting includes a presentation from Reusable New England, a zero waste policy analyst there. So wanted to mention that, super relevant to Gary's presentation. And if you're available to pop on tomorrow, those are great meetings to join. Also listed on this slide is the Recycling Market Development Working Group. This is a very new working group that started at the beginning of 2022. I think it's had 3 meetings so far. And this group is also contributing to the development of a recycling market development action plan. And these are all open to the public, and they're welcoming participation of anyone interested in building markets for recyclables and other materials such as food waste. So packaging, food materials, construction, and other bulky materials are all priority materials that MassDEP has identified and is working to identify ways that they can strengthen end markets for these materials. And I think lastly, I did want to mention the other subcommittees that there are. There's a construction and demolition materials subcommittee that has a meeting coming up on May 25th. And there's also an organics subcommittee meeting that they do not currently have another meeting scheduled, but Recycling Works will have those on our website, and we share through social media when those meetings are scheduled. If you're interested in being on any of these email lists, check out the website. There's a contact listed there that you can email to make sure you're receiving updates about when the meetings are scheduled. And also they post summaries of what happens, summaries with the slides and notes from the meetings. White goods, to my understanding, include things like appliances. So refrigerators, dishwashers, things like that. I'll let Heather and Abby jump in if I say anything incorrect.
Microwaves are not considered a white good, but anything bigger than that.
Great. That's a good explanation. I think that is it for my very basic intro slides about waste bans and engagement opportunities with MassDEP. Let me know if I missed any questions in the chat or if there are any others before I hand it back off to my colleagues.
Yeah, any questions for Lauren? We'll need you to, let's see, unmute yourself if you do, or you can raise your hand.
I appreciate everyone asking questions as we go too. That is very helpful.
Thanks, Lauren. Bill, did you have a question?
Yes, just a quick question. I admit I've not read the plan that the state has. And my question pertained more to residential. I know in Framingham, if you want to get rid of that, a mattress or carpets, it's not really an easy thing to do. So the state ban, what are the towns and cities going to do in Massachusetts? What do they have to do that maybe they're not doing now? Will we still be able to get rid of things curbside? Or is this going to be a major feat? Like if we pull 3 feet of insulation out now, we have to go to 1 or 2 places in Massachusetts to get rid of it. It's crazy, in my opinion. That is extreme. But so anyway,
Yeah, that's a really good question. And while our program focuses on commercial, the solid waste master plan definitely includes a ton of information on the municipal or residential side. The MassDEP does have a mattress recycling grant program for municipalities in Massachusetts. So we can definitely get you that information, and that is intended to help communities address this and collect mattresses from their residents.
That would be great. I really, my business doesn't deal with mattresses at all in any way,
Yeah.
except I need to take a break maybe. But in terms of getting rid of them correctly and appropriately, it would be great to have information, if nothing else, just to bring up in some of the town hall meetings, to make sure we're moving forward. So that'd be great. Thanks.
That's excellent. And yeah, I think that's a great point. Everyone here is, a resident of a certain town and have your own business network. So we're looking to get the word out about these waste bans and about how our program can assist. So please feel free to share widely if you have any, newsletters or social media channels that you would be interested in us sharing some content. We would be happy to do so.
Terrific. Thank you. I'm going to ask that we go ahead and move forward. And Abby, if you want to keep going, this is all really great. So continue to add your questions to the chat, and we'll be stopping periodically.
Thanks, Pam. Thank you, Lauren, too. That was wonderful. Just so you know, I cannot see the chat on my end. So if there is any questions directed at me, let me know, Pam or Heather. And we're actually going to start off with our first poll. So Pam, if you could cue that up. Great, so you should be seeing that on your screen now. So we want to get a sense of what your facility is currently throwing away in the trash. So you maybe are able to select multiple or just one. Select the
You're able to select multiple.
Great, thank you. So select everything. Maybe you're throwing everything away. You don't have any recycling or reuse programs. Maybe you're throwing away food material in the trash, cardboard, plastic film, wooden pallets, maybe plastic pallets too, bottles and cans, or other, and you want to let us know in the chat what you are currently throwing away. Looks like we're getting some answers in here, which as a co-host, we cannot answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will continue. So we've got a few more people who maybe haven't submitted. What's interesting is that I haven't seen anybody say everything yet. Why don't I go ahead and I'm going to end the poll so that, yep, we've got everybody in here, I think is going to respond. So I'm going to end and share the results. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, yep. It looks like the majority, we have a lot of people that are throwing away food material, which is great because we're going to cover a lot of these materials today in our presentation.
Cool.
So this is great to see this array of responses. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
And something that Lauren had alluded to earlier is our Find a Recycler tool that is on the homepage of our Recycling Works website. We have a website full of resources, many of which we'll be reviewing today, relevant for many different sectors and for different materials. So our Find a Recycler tool on our homepage includes service providers for businesses and institutions that are looking to partner with a hauler or processor of any material, pretty much on that poll question we just shared, including mattresses, textiles, haulers of single stream recycling, cardboard, metal, wood, you name it, it is likely on this drop down list. So essentially you select the material from the drop down list, enter your zip code, click search, and then you will see a results page, pretty similar to what you see on your screen right now. So anyone can log on and use our Find a Recycler tool, or you can feel free to call me, Heather, Lauren, or any of the other Recycling Works staff on this event today. We also have a email hotline and phone number on our website that's staffed by our real colleagues, during regular business hours. So you can call us there as well to receive customized suggestions for whatever your particular material or situation is, or we can help filter through some of these results that you see on our tool here. And I want to note that we, as we're funded by the state, we don't endorse any particular service provider, one or over the other. We just help you think through what types of services will best suit your needs so you can make the best decision for your business. And Heather is going to take it off next and talk a little bit more about what our customized technical assistance looks like.
Thanks, Abby. So if the information that you're looking, if your question isn't able to be answered, on that quick phone call or email return, we have more in-depth technical assistance, and that can be done in person, over the phone or virtually. And Abby and I are both field staff that will go to businesses and institutions and help them evaluate their waste, and really listen to what the goals of the organization are, and work to help with, we follow that hierarchy of prevention, donation, and diversion. And it really can be, well, it was started because of waste bans, but we do receive questions that aren't banned material. And then we also receive questions that are problem material. And so we're not able to have a solution for everything, and not in every area of the state, but we will certainly do our best to try and find a solution. And then we help with training, education, signage, kind of assisting with bin placement, best practices of different color bins. We can do an analysis of the costs of like what could be the avoided disposal cost by doing a diversion program, so that you know the amount of money that you have to put into another program, because typically other programs do have costs. And so we can help evaluate that. And if it's an apples to oranges, we can try to figure out a common denominator to make it be something like a cost per ton, so that it is easier to make a decision. And we learned through COVID that we could do remote assistance. There's nothing like the actual value of being on site, but it totally works.
You follow the path that waste travels, as we like to say, throughout your facility.
For sure, yes. So we also, would like to appreciate the Office of Technical Assistance, where they're a non-regulatory agency within the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, providing free, confidential, on-site technical assistance to the manufacturers, businesses, and institutions for hazardous materials. So if we're running into a question on a material, we will just absolutely make a referral, or offer to make a referral to them, and they can do the same for us if they're running into a business that has cardboard, for example, that there could be an opportunity, and they have questions about implementing a program. And so we have all signed on to their newsletter. So if you haven't done that, I would recommend it as well.
Awesome. So there are many R's out there: refuse, repurpose, redesign, as Gary mentioned earlier today. But for our session, we're going to focus on the reduce, waste, and reusing materials. So the next priority is on this upside down triangle, which is how waste people thinking. We're going to see another one a bit later on today for the EPA food recovery hierarchy, but would be to recycle, recover energy, and the last priority or option of disposal in the trash. Reduce and reuse are shown at the top of this hierarchy because these strategies typically have the most benefits for the environment and your business. They can have positive economic impact by reducing disposal costs, increase efficiencies, Gary mentioned a lot of this too, and help reach any goals that your organization might have to reduce waste or achieve various sustainability goals.
So today we're going to talk about manufacturing first. We have some examples and stories on each of these. Recognizing that there's offices in about all of these manufacturing facilities, and so there's strategies there. And we were talking about corporate cafeterias or break rooms where there are wasted food exists. And so we've got some best practices that we've developed, tools and case studies. So I know it's hard to be in a Zoom meeting. So, we really do encourage participation. We're going to have a breakout group soon, so we'll kind of get to meet some of you. And I would encourage you, Pam had mentioned that many of you know each other from being in person and through the business world, but if you wanted to kind of introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great to just kind of know who's here in case people want to make connections.
Definitely. Thanks, Heather. So as we talked about technical assistance already a little bit, we wanted to start off by talking about some of our waste bin signage. This is something that we provide to businesses that we work with as a complimentary service. Big part of our assistance, Heather talked about it a little bit, is helping your staff understand your existing programs, or if you are implementing something new, it will need to be communicated to your staff. Specifically, the what to include and what not to include in recycling collections, food scrap collections, really any program. So we have these signs available, English, Spanish, we have many other languages. If we don't have a language that you need or is spoken at your business, then we can get them translated for you. We worked with a food manufacturer who requested our signage be translated into Portuguese and Haitian Creole. So we do have some existing examples we can share with you. This particular package of signs has English and Spanish on 2 separate signs, but we also have them combined as well, which we'll see a few more examples of those later on. So we can tailor these signs to the businesses that we work with by adding your logos, maybe making new material signage, again, for your particular material streams. And we can also modify these signs to, be applicable to whatever contamination you might be seeing. So for example, in the shrink wrap collection stream, maybe you want to put no stickers on there. So we could add that to the no section here. Signs can be used to actually label material collection bins themselves, maybe the wall spaces up above the bin. And they can also be printed out and used as a physical training tool for maybe a new hire or as a new program is implemented. So actually given out to staff too. And we thought we could, start off by reviewing what is acceptable in a typical single stream or dual stream recycling program in our state. This is a snapshot taken from the Recycle Smart initiative, which is another initiative of the MassDEP, whose goal was really to put out some clear, consistent messaging on what is or is not recyclable in the state of Massachusetts. So if it hasn't already been shared, we should share the link to the Recycle Smart website, which has a recyclopedia, and you can actually look up materials that might be in question. For example, a pizza box. If you weren't sure whether or not to put that in your recycling bin, the Recycle Smart would tell you, yes, pizza boxes are recyclable, just no food and grease is okay. So the top row covers what is acceptable in our recycling bins, such as metal, food and beverage cans, just empty them out. Plastic bottles, jars, jugs, and tubs, put the caps back on. Glass bottles and jars, empty and scooped clean. In the case of that dreaded peanut butter jar, just scoop it clean with a spatula and it should be good to go. And of course, paper and cardboard. We might be familiar with the no section here, but the big pieces are, please do not include plastic bags. Do not bag your recyclables in your bins. Plastic bags, hoses, and wires act as tanglers. They get caught in the gears at recycling facilities, causing the facilities to actually shut down. Staff have to climb in the gears, as you see here, and actually clean out all those tanglers, as we call them. And this can be pretty dangerous for these workers at these facilities. And our materials are brought to recycling facilities where people actually work. So it matters what we put in our bin. And of course, this contamination, as we call it, materials we don't want in the recycling bin, can cause extra cost to your business, because this is costing the recycling facility money by having to close down. So that typically ends up getting passed on to the customer. And so Heather's going to review how to use plastic bags if you want to in your recycling bins, but ensure they don't end up in the recycling dumpster.
We created this infographic because when a few years ago, the specifications on recycling really tightened up because we were, truthfully lazy about what we were recycling and was being sent for processing. So it really, the end sites, the markets got tighter, which made the processing facilities get tighter on their requirements, and then the haulers, and that comes back to the generators. And a big piece of that was no plastic bags. So, but a lot of people use plastic bags as liners to keep the bins cleaner and to assist with moving materials. So there's a couple of messages here. We suggest using clear bags for recycling to distinguish them from a gray or a black bag for trash. The bag can be lifted out of the recycling bin and put in the cart. And now, because they're different colors, it's easy to ensure that the streams stay separated, even if they're collected in the same cart on the way to the different disposal areas. The clear plastic bag can be emptied out into the recycling bin and reused if it's clean, or discarded if it's not. So these reminders are also available on the website, or we could get it for you directly. The next one is a tool that we find very useful called the Facility Materials Management Plan. And it's more than just a waste management plan, but it is a fillable PDF where your organization could list what materials you have, how they need to be prepared, what the interior collection containers might look like, where to take the material for pickup, and include any photos. My photos happen to be sideways here, but the idea is that you can share photos of what the bins might look like, or what the material might look like. This one has, we'll get to it later, but this one had the fabric covered cardboard, which was a question about whether that could be recycled, and also a plastic coated cardboard, which sort of like plastic tape on a cardboard box, but no, the recycler said no, it wouldn't be accepted. So that question was clarified now on the Facility Materials Management Plan, so it could be posted in a common area or handed out in a training. There is a place at the bottom for the contact name at the facility to so that if there are questions, it could go straight to that person and figure out what do you do with this item, or something's not listed on the plan, what do you do with it? Universal waste can be included there. If you had food for donation, there's a multitude of uses. So we have found this to be very helpful.
Awesome. Great other training tool that can be handed out or posted as well in a facility. So poll number 2. Pam, go ahead and launch that one. And then following this, we're going to get into our breakout groups as well.
Great. So I've launched it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we'd like to hear what your biggest challenge in waste prevention and diversion is. And this is, again, another multiple selection. Maybe additional costs are preventing you from preventing or diverting. Hard to train staff, maybe a lot of staff turnover, or maybe some of these resources will help you out with that. Maybe your leadership is not as on board as you like them to be. Maybe you haven't thought about this in the past. This is great that you're here to learn about some different options. Vendors, you've tried to work with them, maybe they're not as flexible as you'd like them to be, or other, and you'd like to customize your answer in the chat.
So we've got, yeah, almost everybody has completed. Look, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share it with everybody. So an interesting spread of reasons why it's difficult. Looks like staff buy-in and training, and vendors and leadership buy-in approval are the biggest reasons. And Jill points out that the biggest reduction challenge, so many items come in single-use plastic film repackaging.
That is a great segue.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill, for sharing. Great. So we can go ahead and go into our breakout groups now, which we would like to talk about packaging, one of the top concerns on our poll, and pretty much what we're noticing too in the field that businesses are facing today. So we can discuss this in smaller groups, some solutions that we've learned about, challenges. Let's talk about putting some pressure on some upstream vendors.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms. I have 5 different breakout rooms, and somebody from Recycling Works is in almost all of the groups. So we'll give you 5 minutes to just really quickly share your thoughts on what you're doing or what your facility is doing to reduce packaging. Go ahead and join your groups. Let's see. All right, Lindsay, I just moved you to a room. You should be ready to join.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You know, I wonder if there's a list somewhere where it tells you where you can get rid of things that you can't get rid of in your single stream or your trash. Because we have colored bags, and we take our stuff to the dump. And the stuff that that's going to go into a landfill is in an orange bag, and the stuff that you're going to recycle is in a white bag, and you empty out the white bag into where it has to go. But what about the stuff that can't go in either one of those? Is there a list somewhere where you can access it to find out where you can put those things?
Sounds like a great question for our Recycling Works colleagues. So welcome back, everybody. I know this was a quick conversation, but I wanted to make sure that we get to the rest of this great material that we're going to be hearing about.
Thank you, Pam. I learned a lot from my breakout group, so thank you so much for sticking with us and participating in that. You know, as customers, it's often our responsibility to speak up about wasteful packaging and to drive change. So this is one example strategy that we learned from a business that we worked with several years ago. We call it our vendor packaging template. So they use this to communicate with their suppliers. You know, this particular letter is meant to be customized to fit your individual situation. You know, for instance, the business had asked for bagged packaging over cardboard box packaging, which is a little unusual for some of us because most of us have access to cardboard recycling, where film plastic can be a little bit more rare. So you can choose to communicate with your vendors in a variety of different ways, picking up the phone, you know, emailing them, or sending a letter similar to this. But the point is to make your suppliers and other vendors aware of your overall goals to reduce the amount of materials that need to be recycled or disposed of on site, or even, you know, provide some alternatives like, can the supplier take your packaging back when they deliver? Maybe they can take steps to right size their packaging and eliminate the need for excess. So talk and engage with other departments throughout your facility, like your IT department, office staff, purchasers that are likely submitting orders. Get on a bulk ordering schedule, another idea. But yeah, work with them to share ideas on how to prevent difficult packaging from being disposed of on site. So I hope Heather is here. I'm not seeing her right on my screen, but we're going to get into some, you know, cool ways that businesses have reduced and reused various packaging materials, starting with our 5-gallon buckets and drums.
So we do see these when we're out on sites, different manufacturers, and if they are clean, it seems like they are, you know, in demand. So the 5-gallon buckets with lids can be donated or sold, and they have multiple uses, including compost collection, storage, universal waste collection, and a 50-gallon blue barrels that may have contained chemicals or a juice concentrate or something can be cleaned up and reused as a shipping container, made into rain barrels, used as recycling barrels, or storage space in manufacturing.
And reusable containers. One business we worked with in the Springfield area transitioned from using plastic film and pallets to using these reusable shipping containers. They have locking wheels. The contract even bought heavy duty Velcro straps that held the lids in place. The business, Harry and Grodsky, said that these containers save them time and labor and money. So they're specifically saving on purchasing and disposing of these pallets and shrink wrap. Since they work in a lot of dense city areas, they're able to, you know, save time in the loading dock by just not having to wait for a fork truck, just wheeling the crates out and wheeling them back in. So the lid also acts as a safety feature, and they're stackable in the warehouse too. So they implemented this program in January, and, you know, they're still uncovering all of these costs and, you know, benefits to using them. And they've already committed to buying more in the future. So they were very happy with this decision.
And reusable pallets. So the challenge with those is sort of keeping track of where they've gone, because they certainly do have a value to them. And so they seem to work best if there's a dedicated vendor and customer so that they can go back and forth. And the delivery crates, I'm seeing more and more of these in my travels, whether it's pharmacies or convenience stores and grocery stores. And we've also seen food donation, these types of bins used for food donation, having a kind of a designated area in your facility for items that are going out.
And color coding them, which is great.
Oh, yes, indeed. So the point here is many facilities receive material in the cardboard gaylords, and I've seen them used as trash containers, and then the entire package thrown in the trash, and that has caused some failed loads for having too much cardboard in there. So you know, if it's possible to empty out the cardboard and recycle that, that could work, but these self-dumping hoppers are another option for just not even, using the cardboard in the first place.
And another success story with reusable packaging, Untold Brewery in Situate. They have a very comprehensive recycling program, but they're also reducing their packaging waste by using reusable pallet wrap, pictured here on the right, to help prevent their shrink wrap from being disposed of. And they were awarded actually a grant from MassDEP to pilot this program. So they have many cool programs. So we're sharing links with you today so you can learn more about them. And another great example of packaging reuse and reduction, Preppy Puppy is the dog treat manufacturer in West Wareham. They reuse packaging from incoming deliveries and their outgoing deliveries. Also, plastic bags that are used for some of their ingredient packaging are reused as trash can liners. And they also share their, get rid of their fiber drums for one of their neighboring businesses reuses them to be reused as trash cans and recycling cans as well. And to further achieve waste reduction, they're actually working with a packaging designer. Yes, that type of business does exist. We were all surprised to reduce the size and increase the recyclability of their packaging, so that their boutique shops that receive their specialty treats would have an easier time managing those materials. And my personal favorite material stream is C&D materials. Your facility has an upcoming renovation, C&D project of any kind, we can help you with those materials. So we just like to make a plug for deconstruction and how we can help, either your facility or your general contractor working on the project to identify materials that can be deconstructed or cleaned out prior to demolition activities begin. And we help you work with various reuse outlets across the state to propose the best fit for your materials that you're generating there.
We created this battery disposal guide as part of our work with Covanta and Community EcoPower because the lithium batteries can cause fires if damaged, defective, or crushed. And so helping residents, businesses, any person identify what the battery is that they have and how to properly and most cost effectively handle it is the purpose of this guide. So the rechargeable batteries can typically be recycled through the call to recycle programs at no charge. Lithium primaries, both the kind of nickel sized and the household size, cannot be thrown in the trash. They certainly can be flammable and they need tape on their terminals. Lead acid batteries banned from disposal through the waste bans, and they typically have like a value being returned, like when you're purchasing a new one. And if they are leaking, they are hazardous waste. And then the alkaline batteries do not have mercury in them anymore, even the hearing aid batteries. And so those can be disposed of in the regular trash. And universal waste, for our purposes here, is fluorescent light bulbs and mercury containing products. And I just wanted to point out the Massachusetts Mercury Management Act, which does prohibit their disposal. Even the light bulbs with the green tips on the end, which are lower mercury, but not no mercury. And the state contract FAC 110 lists the vendors that the state has vetted for recycling.
And we mentioned textile reuse and recycling, as it's going to, textiles are going to be added to the Massachusetts list of waste bans effective November 1st of this year. Again, this applies to any clothing, footwear, bedding, towels, curtains, fabric, other similar products of that nature. It excludes any textiles that are contaminated with mold, bodily fluids, insects, oil, and other hazardous substances. For the most part, excluding those contaminated textiles, the majority of textiles can be reused, resold, or converted into new products rather than being thrown away. And as the MassDEP says, donate it, don't judge, even if it's missing a button, it's ripped, whatever it might be. The reuse outlet will sort through it, and they will. They have partnerships with other markets, so either it gets resold at a store or it gets sorted out and sent to a secondary market, probably overseas. And there are the SMART Association can help connect with markets for specifically wiping rags, but yeah, again, any textile can be recycled or reused other than wet, moldy items or items contaminated with oil or other hazardous materials.
Just thinking broadly about how businesses can work together, if possible, to create a material stream large enough for a recycler or reuse outlet to accept them. We were talking about shrink wrap and plastic bags in our breakout room, and so perhaps there's a way that if there's a neighborhood of businesses, that one business might consolidate bags from their neighbors for baling, and another one might say like, okay, well, I'll put in a styrofoam densifier, and they could kind of like share resources with each other.
And of course, we come across difficult to recycle or reuse materials. Shrink wrap covered cores. One business decided to make a contest with their employees to incentivize them to unwrap the cores, which they had a recycling program for, but not if it was covered in shrink wrap. So they had employees write their names, and they were entered into a contest to win a gift card. But other materials that are, we come across that we don't claim to be able to help with everything, but we will try our best to do the research. Fabric.
The fabric cover, the fabric covered cardboard here was a little bit interesting because the way they were packaging it it was going in disposal, but the pieces of cardboard folded, and they kind of folded on the fabric, kind of like a hinge. So that made pieces that appeared as though they were clean cardboard. So if it was a part of a comprehensive load inspection at a waste disposal site, it appeared from a distance as if it was a load of cardboard, when up close it was fabric covered cardboard. So just kind of trying to find a home for that. But when we couldn't, it is just clarifying with their hauler and disposal site of like what this material is. And rubber, I don't think we have time to talk about rubber today, but if we have ideas about where rubber might be recycled in the state or in the area, please send the ideas our way.
It might be tedious, to some, but we were requested to make this training tool, how to teach your staff how to flatten cardboard. If you don't have a baler or compactor that's going to compact it and squish it, use a swift kick to the corner of that box, and it should be able to collapse. And flattening cardboard is just important when you have limited space for, got to conserve space in that cardboard dumpster. And we're transitioning into the office part of our presentation today. This was just a business that used a bin inventory spreadsheet that we've linked to in this blog post here to take an assessment of the bins and signs throughout their facility to ensure when they were beginning their recycling program that they had adequate signage and bins throughout every part of their facility. So that is all available for download for your individual use.
Oh, paper and printing. It still torments me to receive something in the mail and there's just one line on that next page where they just could have just double checked with a print preview and adjusted to make it be on one page. So just if that is more intuitive, I guess, We're still talking about this 30 years later. And again, another kind of side benefit of COVID, where we've had to do so much digitally, schools, businesses are all seeing a reduction in the paper purchased and recycled because they've just figured out how to go digital. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And we cannot go through all the materials today that we can help with, but just know that if it's something that you are interested in reusing, recycling, or preventing, we can help. Even if it's used in surplus office furniture, we can help help find a new home for it.
Same with electronics. That state contract FAC 110 is there for disposal, but there are also other options of secondary markets and donation.
And we're back in the office, so we're back to pizza parties and maybe even catered events. And go figure, we have a tip sheet for workplace events and catering to help you, prevent waste by maybe offering or requiring RSVPs to events, using reusable serviceware like plates, forks, knives, bowls, and cups instead of disposable serviceware. Maybe instead of using individual condiment packets, we use the whole bottle of ketchup, just as an example of some tips that are found on that sheet. And we heard a lot of food material is going in the trash at your businesses, whether you're a food manufacturer or maybe you have an on-site cafeteria or your staff just have food scraps in the break room. This is an example, great model sorting station for trash, food scraps, and recycling. It's color-coded, it's got great signs. Great way to help reduce contamination in your break room office collection.
Looking at the EPA hierarchy, very similar to the other ones. When we're working with businesses, we go from the top, source reduction, donation, and then diversion. And folks may not be ready to talk about the things in that order. So we're able to kind of work with the business at any point in the hierarchy and kind of go up and down that in the way that works for them. So all of this information will be on the slides, and it will be just, if nothing else, how to contact Recycling Works. So we do have comprehensive guidelines on source reduction that talk about different ways to reduce through all these items listed, talking about quality control in a manufacturing facility, of just kind of looking at where waste occurs and why, and just trying to make those adjustments to reduce that. Gary had talked about waste tracking and audits and flipping the lid, and it doesn't need to be a full comprehensive waste assessment where each item is weighed and tracked. It can be as simple as looking in a bin, picking it up, see how heavy it is. Is there food waste in there? We're looking in the barrels around the facility. What's in the dumpster as it sort of layers up and getting full? Even asking the hauler for pictures when it's being dumped, or perhaps following the load and taking a look yourself. There's nothing like the surprise of seeing what is actually in that dumpster.
That's right. And, after prevention strategies and honing in on that, we have a guidance to help you develop a food donation program. So this could be for your workplace event, keep this in mind, or maybe even for some of the manufacturers or grocers that might be out there that have products that is still, safe for human consumption, but can be donated. And if you've ever thought about food donation in the past, this is a great place to start. It shares liability protections, which we're covered if you donate food in good faith to a nonprofit organization in the state of Massachusetts. You're covered at the state and federal level. And following food donation and prevention, then there's food scraps and maybe food that is spoiled. We have lots of infrastructure throughout the state to accept food scraps, whether that be for anaerobic digestion, composting, or animal feed. Also included on the MassDEP's list of waste bans includes commercial food waste and of course packaged food as well. So there is a infrastructure in our state to depackage food, and then the food material is sent to a commercial composter or an animal feed operation or anaerobic digester. And we have a guidance to help your business begin a source separation program for food scraps, or collecting our food scraps separately from the trash using all of these best practices with clear signage, training, color coding, also ways to prevent smell and pests. Remember, it's not more material you're handling, you're just separating out food scraps. We're zooming through the last of this because we do want to get to some questions and discussion that you have. So we also, can help you think through what is the best service level for your food scraps collection by using our food waste estimator guide, which is on our Recycling Works website. That helps us, and in conjunction with our technical assistants, to help figure out what bin size, pickup frequency would be a good place to start for you. Biggest thing to remember with your food scraps collection is to have your food scraps picked up and removed from indoor and outdoor areas at the same frequency, or maybe more frequent than trash is removed from those areas. And Heather, if you want to take on our hauler contracting.
Oh, look, there I was stalling, just being entertained. As Gary said, knowing your waste, what are your discards? So being able to talk to your hauler about what you have and not just saying, I need a dumpster for trash, just being very specific about the different types of materials that you have. We have a guidance for kind of figuring out what those questions are and how to speak to a hauler, and adjusting contracts for collecting different materials or adjusting volumes, complying with the waste bans and other regulations, and definitely understanding the billing, the feedback, the perhaps load rejection, contamination fees. All of that is covered in this guidance.
Example of our dual combined English and Spanish signage. Again, we customize these signs depending on your particular situation and what you collect. Where your food scraps end up going for the end site will impact what you can collect. For example, if you are sending your food scraps to an animal feed operation, you should not include paper products and compostable ware, because the animals don't want to eat that stuff. They only want the food. And one example, another great, case study that we're sharing today is Lesser Evil, a popcorn and other snack manufacturer, and they are composting their excess popcorn that falls on the floor or gets, popped all around during the packaging process. So another great way to reduce your impact.
And I realize there are no grocery stores here, but the point of this is each of you have a hauler and have a wide variety of relationships with that hauler. So here's a case study where we worked with the hauler who worked with their customer. And in that same theme, the working with the hauler is probably the most important part of the resource management contracting for waste. That next slide, Abby, if you would. Thanks. So there's information about this also on the website. Just wanted to draw your attention to it if it's something you might be interested in. It's really all about communication with your hauler, but it's just sort of a different way of looking at waste. And rather than having just a typical dollars per ton relationship, just trying to figure out how can we cost or revenue share in recycling. How could we share in reduction of materials? It could be have the hauler, the account rep be a dedicated account rep. They can attend meetings, provide trainings, do waste assessments, and really it's sort of a mix and match of different components of this. It doesn't need to be a full-blown resource management contract.
And back to Preppy Puppy, because they worked with a local food rescue organization to collect their slightly imperfect and cracked or broken dog treats to give them to the South Shore Community Action Council that works with families for human food rescue, but also they understand that some of these families have pets, so they could also donate some of their dog treats to those families as well that we're going to end up in the compost bin. So, and we'll end on these resources. So we made it.
So there's a lot of case studies on the website, some great stories, both in video and printed form. And these are links so that you can click on them at your leisure and interest. And we'd love to talk about it with you if you have any questions or inspired by any of this to do something at your facility.
Great. Thank you guys so much. So lots and lots of resources. Thank you, Olivia, for keeping our chat completely filled with interesting things for people to click on. And we have recorded this webinar, and I can share with you the chat if anybody wants to see all of the different resources that Olivia shared as we went along, or hopefully you were able to download that yourself. But are there, we do have a few minutes. Does anybody have any questions for any of our presenters? You can share your video, unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand. Love to hear from you.
Pam, I also breezed right over the last poll question. So while people are thinking about their question, we could do the last poll.
Sure.
Well.
Why don't we do that? I know I was like, did I?
Oh, it was my fault. I was worried that we weren't gonna have time for Q&A.
No, it was a good idea. Thanks. So I did just post this last poll, which is asking about what your staff practices are. What does your company or your staff do routinely? And again, it's a multiple, selection option. Good. There's at least one. There's 2 paperless offices. Awesome. 3 paperless offices. 4 paperless offices.
We were worried about that slide because it might seem really obvious to us on this call because we're waste minded and we're interested in recycling and preventing material from being even recycled, but share those, double-sided copy ideas or other waste prevention ideas with your staff that might not always think about that kind of stuff.
Great. So I just shared the results. Lots of good work happening. So questions, anyone?
Pam, in my small group, Jean Verns asked about cellophane, plastic wrap of medical equipment with a lot of biotech companies. I suggested some may be plastic film and others might be cellophane, and that CET could probably help with the plastic film, but I wasn't sure about the cellophane wraps. So can CET address that or suggest how to address it? I suggest they contact the Association of Plastic Recyclers.
So is cellophane the type that, like, if you try to squeeze it, it doesn't stay in a ball?
It crackles, right?
Yeah. Right. I would need to double check the specifications as well. And if it seems like if there's a large enough quantity, they may want to talk about it. So that's sort of the dilemma of anything less than a trailer load of plastic bags and shrink wrap. Like, how do you consolidate it, get it into a cost-effective like diversion?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I hadn't mentioned is considering alternatives, asking the suppliers to wrap it in something that you can recycle or reuse. And so if it's coming in cellophane, maybe plastic film might be an acceptable alternative.
Yeah, so source reduction is really challenging when it comes to materials that contribute to solid waste, but looking for solutions so that you're not creating that solid waste stream up front is always the first thing to do. And I think you've all presented a lot of, ideas on how to do that. Ultimately, however, you still need to manage the waste, the solid waste that is being generated. And so also a lot of really great resources on how to do that more thoughtfully and in a way that has less of an ultimate impact on the environment. So I really appreciate that. Any last questions or thoughts from anybody here? Great. Well, thank you all again. This was a wonderful webinar, lots of great information. Really appreciate all of your time. Thank you for everybody who was here. I will be sending around a survey in the next couple of days. And once you've completed that, we can go ahead and, send your certificates. For those of you who are planners, you know that we've had many different training events in the last couple of weeks. So, your patience is really appreciated. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to stop recording. And great. Okay. Bye, everybody.